synapses, what that's doing is it's spreading out the information to go to different pathways. Okay, motor pathways are going to be more simple. Okay, you have an impulse from the brain, it goes down to the muscle to make the muscle contract. But sensory stuff has to go to a lot of other different things. Okay? Sensory goes into the thalamus, and then from the thalamus it may have a couple other different branches that may go to different parts of the brain so that you can interpret things. Because sensory things, you have a lot, you may have like sensory memories or something like that. It's like when, did any of you guys ever see that the bodies exhibit? Okay. When I was in chiropractic school, we did human dissection. Right? And so you have formaldehyde. Anybody ever done like cats or whatever? Okay. So you get that formaldehyde. That's a pretty strong smell, right? So when I was at that bodies thing, obviously there's no formaldehyde because it's got the resin or whatever it is. But when I saw the dissection and the muscles and tissues and stuff like that, in my brain I smelled formaldehyde. Because it's like, that sensory thing went into my nose and it triggered somewhere in my sensory processing where I had the smell of formaldehyde. So I smelled it even though it wasn't there. So it's things like that, like sensory information goes in and it goes into the thalamus and then it may shoot out neurons in a couple other different areas that triggers and involves other different things. And that's like when you say, we talked about before, if you have a stroke, when you're recovering, you have to learn how to do things all over again. And you have all these different proprioception things that go on, and your mind has to learn how to redo all these different tasks. So then, like I said, the white matter, again, is going to be divided into anterior, lateral, and posterior columns. And then when you talk about the lateral column, there is, again, also a little bit more further breakdown, is that the more medial something is in the spinal cord, the more likely it's going to be the upper part of the body, and then the more lateral it's going to be more likely to be the lower part of the body.
This is true also in the hemispheres and the cerebellum?
No, it's more in the layout of the spinal cord here. So just like when we talked about these gracilis, that's more of the lower body, you said, right? The kingatus is more of the upper body. It has to do, like if you get into, again, we're not trying to be, in-depth neurologists or something like that, but the thing is that to understand that, it has to do with, like, let's say if you have something in the central part of the spinal cord and there's a lesion there and it's putting pressure starting from medial and going outwards. So then you're going to know that it's going to affect more certain, whether it's going to be the upper part of the body versus the lower body. So that's more like more subtle variations if you're doing neurology. But for the purposes of what you're going to be doing, it's not that important to be that precise. But just understand that there is different concepts like that. So if you're going to get into more detailed neurology or neuroanatomy, then that's going to be more important. But I'm not going to worry too much. The purposes of why we're learning this stuff is that you're not necessarily, just like what I was saying before, is that some of this stuff, I may have to say, well, I might have to get back on that because, some people weren't even born when I was studying some of this stuff, right? Everybody less than 25? Okay, so yeah. Right? So, and then that's just to tell you that some of this stuff you're not really going to use. But you know it, and then maybe if you have to refresh your memory, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, and yeah, I sort of know why I needed to know it, but you need to know it now so that you have a background for it. But basically it's going to come down to this. When you do your 5-minute neuro exam stuff, you're going to know, okay, I'm going to do light touch, I'm going to do pain sensitivity, temperature, stereognosis, things like that. So you know that it's different tracts and what types of things are involved. Okay, so for right now, unfortunately, you're going to have to know more of this detail, so we need to get into it. But then some of that also is going to be on certain exams you're going to have to take. You got to pass your board exams, your comps, and license exams, and then a lot of times they like to have questions like that where if you have a lesion to this such and such level, you're going to lose temperature on what side of the body and pain sensitivity on what side of the body. So you're going to need to know that kind of stuff. So then we need to know when we're talking about these different tracts, where do they cross? Do they cross right away? Do they go up first and then cross? Or do they never cross at all? Or do they cross and then come back? We just go through all these different columns and tracts and know what they do. And then, like I say, you need to know these lesions. Okay, so just understand that if something is from about, let's say, T8, or even T3, T4, T5 especially, from there down, it's not going to affect the arms. Okay, the arm's going to be pretty much from C4 to T1, 2, around there. Okay? And then lateral column, you may have some that are ascending tracts, and then you may have some that are descending. So then always remember, just if you see the word, the name of the tract, if it says cortico something, you know that it's what? Descending. If it's corticospinal, you know it's descending. If it's spinothalamic or something, you know that it's ascending. Okay, so if you know the name of the tract, you can figure out whether it's going to go up or down, and know if it's sensory or motor. But then you also have to, if you're given a scenario where they say, okay, there's a lesion to the right half of the spinal cord at such and such level, so then you need to know, okay, that's going to affect motor tracts that are going down, and most of the motor tracts, this corticospinal, remember, most of those cross at the pyramidal decussation up in the medulla oblongata. So most of the time, motor is going to be same side from that area down. And then a lot of times, remember, certain sensory ones are going to be same side of the body or other side of the body. So just make sure you go through those and know which one is which. So lateral spinal thalamic, we know it's going from the spine. The thalamus, so that's going to be a sensory type of one. Lateral tells us in the lateral column. And then this is going to be pain and temperature. So that when we talked about the posterior column, what kind of information was mostly that going to be? More specific. Conscious proprioception. Okay. And what's going to do the unconscious proprioception? What's one of the words going to be in the name of the tract? What's this part back here? Cerebellum. So is it going to be cerebellospinal or is it going to be spinal cerebellum?
Spinal cerebellum.
Right. Is that going to be same side of the body or opposite side?
Same
side. So lateral spinal thalamic is going to be pain and temperature. And then you've got those little handouts, that thing where you can draw the different maps. You should have, I think if you have another one, you can use it to study that more on your own and make more notes on it. Or, if you'd like to do watercolor painting, you can make one of these, right? You have too much time on your hands? Okay. So then lateral column, we're talking about pain and temperature. So again, just be able to understand, if there's a lesion here, what's it going to do? It's going to be lots of pain and temperature. Usually it's going to be contralateral, because that one's going to cross right away. And then light touch, again, that's going to be part of the posterior column, but also it's going to be the ventral spinal thalamic tract, or the anterior spinal thalamic. Okay. So that's the one, like I say, if it's only half of the spinal cord, you're still going to have that sensation because some of them cross and some of them don't. Okay. But, if you're quadriplegic, you're going to lose all of it because the whole spinal cord is wrong. And then unconscious proprioception, again, those are going to be more spinal cerebellar. Then one side of the spinal cord is going to affect the same side of the body. One side of the cerebellum is going to be the same side of the body. But when you're talking about the cerebrum, it's usually opposite, whether it's sensory or motor.